The morning bell rang across the halls of Westbrook Academy. It was not a normal school. It floated in space on a giant station called Harmony Prime. Students from 17 different alien species walked through its wide corridors. Some were tall and thin with skin you could see through. Others were short and covered in soft fur. A few were made of living crystal and made small musical sounds when they moved. The school was famous across the galaxy. Only the best students came here. Only the richest families could afford it. And only the bravest species dared to mix with so many different kinds of life. On this particular morning, something unusual was about to happen. A small human girl stood outside the classroom door. Her name was Emily Park. She was 17 years old. She had dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a cardigan sweater that was too big for her small body. She held her tablet computer close to her chest like a shield. Her eyes looked down at the floor. She seemed nervous. She seemed scared. She seemed like the kind of girl who would apologize for breathing too loud. The door opened. A teacher with 4 arms and blue-green skin looked down at her. This was Instructor Melith, a Valorian. Her species was known for being calm and wise. She smiled with her wide mouth and gestured for Emily to enter. "Class," Instructor Melith said in her soft voice, "please welcome our new transfer student. This is Emily Park. She comes from the Sol System. She will be joining us for the rest of the term." The room went very quiet. Then the whispers started. Sol System. That meant Earth. Earth was a death world. Every student in the galaxy learned about death worlds in their first year of school. These were planets where life was brutal, where creatures fought and killed and ate each other every single day, where the weather could destroy cities, where the ground itself could shake and split open, where the water could drown you and the sun could burn you and the cold could freeze you solid. Earth was one of the worst death worlds ever discovered, and humans were its apex predators. But the students looked at Emily Park and felt confused. This tiny girl did not look dangerous. She looked like she might cry if someone spoke too loudly. When she walked to her seat, she bumped into a desk and immediately said sorry 3 times. She sat down and made herself as small as possible. She did not make eye contact with anyone. A crystalline student named Prism leaned over to his friend. "That is supposed to be a death worlder?" he whispered. "She looks like she would run from a shadow." His friend, a furred creature named Moss, nodded in agreement. "Perhaps the stories about humans are exaggerated. Look at her. She is trembling." They were not wrong. Emily's hands were shaking slightly as she arranged her tablet on the desk. When Instructor Melith asked her to introduce herself, her voice came out soft and uncertain. "Hello," Emily said. "I am Emily. I like reading in quiet places. I hope we can be friends." That was it. No stories of hunting great beasts. No tales of surviving impossible odds. Just a shy girl who liked books. The class relaxed. Whatever humans were supposed to be, this one was clearly different. This one was harmless. They could not have been more wrong. What no one in that classroom understood was that Emily Park had grown up in a place called Montana. It was a wild part of Earth with tall mountains and thick forests and animals that could kill you in 100 different ways. By the time Emily was 8 years old, her grandmother had taught her to track grizzly bears through the wilderness. These bears stood 3 meters tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. Emily learned to read their footprints, to smell their presence, to know when they were hungry and when they were just passing through. When Emily was 12, she met a mountain lion on a hiking trail. The great cat had been stalking her for an hour. Most creatures in the galaxy would have died in the next 30 seconds. Emily did not die. She made herself big. She made loud noises. She threw rocks. She stared into the predator's eyes and refused to look away. The mountain lion, confused by prey that fought back, eventually left to find easier food. When Emily was 15, her vehicle broke down during a snowstorm. The temperature was 30 degrees below zero. The snow was so thick she could not see her hand in front of her face. She walked 15 miles through that storm to reach safety. Her fingers and toes nearly turned black from the cold. She survived anyway. This was what it meant to be human. This was what it meant to come from a death world. Emily knew all of this about herself. She knew that her body was built for endurance. Her species could chase prey until the prey literally died from exhaustion. She knew that her immune system was a weapon of war, fighting off thousands of microscopic invaders every single day. She knew that her bones healed stronger after breaking, that her muscles grew larger after tearing, that her mind could adapt to almost anything. But she also knew something else. She knew that the other species were not ready to see what humans really were. So Emily pretended. She made herself look small and weak. She jumped at sudden sounds, even though her heart barely changed speed. She fumbled with simple tasks, even though her hands could build fires and set traps and throw stones with deadly accuracy. She apologized constantly, even though she had done nothing wrong. It was not fear that made her act this way. It was politeness. Emily had learned long ago that showing your true strength too early only made others afraid. And afraid people did dangerous things. So she wore this mask of weakness like armor. She let them think she was harmless. She let them underestimate her. In the back of the classroom, Emily arranged her tablet and looked around at her new classmates through lowered eyes. She counted 17 exits, including windows and air vents. She noted which students seemed friendly and which seemed hostile. She identified the social leaders and the outcasts. She mapped the entire room in her mind in less than 2 minutes. No one noticed. No one ever noticed. A small smile crossed Emily's face, so quick that no one saw it. This was going to be an interesting year. 3 weeks passed at Westbrook Academy. Emily Park kept her head down. She earned grades that were not too good and not too bad. She sat in the back of every classroom. She ate lunch alone at a small table near the window. She spoke only when spoken to. She was, by all appearances, the most forgettable student in the entire school. But she was not completely alone. His name was Kevin Liu. He was 18 years old. Tall and thin with messy black hair that never stayed flat. He came from a city called Singapore on Earth. He was the only other human at Westbrook Academy. And he had figured out Emily's game on the second day. "You know," Kevin said one afternoon, sliding into the seat across from her at lunch, "you really don't have to try this hard." Emily looked up from her food with practiced confusion. "What do you mean?" Kevin grinned. He had a friendly face and eyes that missed nothing. "Yesterday, in the common room, that chair that broke under the Valorian student. You had it fixed in 40 seconds. I counted." Emily's expression did not change. "I was just helping. You rebuilt it without looking at it. Your hands moved like you had done it 1,000 times before. And then you pretended to be confused about how the pieces went together." Kevin leaned forward. "I know what you are doing. I do it too. Just not as well as you." For a long moment, Emily said nothing. Then, slowly, the mask slipped just a little. Her posture changed. Her eyes sharpened. She looked less like a scared rabbit and more like something that had never been prey in its entire evolutionary history. "They are not ready," Emily said quietly. "The other species? They think they know what humans are, but they only know the stories. If they saw the reality too quickly, it would frighten them." Kevin nodded. "So you play weak." "I play polite," Emily corrected. "There is a difference. From that day forward, Kevin became her only real friend at the academy. They ate lunch together. They studied together. They had quiet conversations about Earth and home and the strange experience of being apex predators in a school full of species that had never needed to fight for survival. But Emily's mask was getting harder to maintain. The first crack appeared during a fire drill. Alarms screamed through the hallways. Lights flashed red. Students panicked, pushing against each other, crying out in fear. The teachers tried to restore order, but there were too many bodies in too small a space. Emily did not panic. She had already identified every exit in the building on her first day. She had mapped escape routes before breakfast. While others screamed and pushed, she calmly guided her entire section of the dormitory out through a side passage that most students did not even know existed. They reached the safety point 4 minutes before anyone else. Instructor Melith noticed. She made a note in Emily's file but said nothing. The second crack appeared in biology class. The students were studying alien toxins, using special equipment to identify dangerous substances. Emily's lab partner, a crystalline being named Prism, was struggling with a sample that the machines could not read. Emily leaned over and sniffed the air near the sample. Just once, just quickly. "That is valerian tree sap mixed with something acidic," she said. "Probably from a citrus fruit. The combination creates a mild paralytic. Not dangerous to most species, but bad for anyone with copper-based blood." Prism stared at her. "How did you know that?" Emily caught herself. Too late. She had spoken without thinking. Her nose had identified the compound automatically, the way a hunting dog identifies a trail. It was instinct. It was millions of years of evolution telling her what was safe to eat and what would kill her. "Lucky guess," Emily said. But her voice was not convincing. The third crack was the worst. It happened in physical education. The students were practicing with weighted training equipment. A large metal bar, designed for a species much stronger than humans, slipped from its holder. It fell toward a small furred student named Lily, who stood frozen in fear below it. Emily moved without thinking. She crossed the distance in less than a second. Her hands caught the bar as it fell. The metal was heavy, at least 80 kilograms, enough to crush Lily into paste. Emily held it like it weighed nothing. She set it down gently on the ground. Then she looked up and realized that everyone was staring at her. The room was completely silent. "That bar weighs more than you do," said Lord Kethis. He was a tall warrior from a species called the Draken. He had scales and claws and teeth designed for tearing flesh. He was also the most popular student in school and the biggest bully. No human should be able to catch that. Emily forced her expression back into confused innocence. "I just reacted. Adrenaline, I think. It happens sometimes. But the damage was done." She saw the way the other students looked at her now. Not with dismissal. With curiosity. With suspicion. With the first hints of fear. After class, Lord Kethis gathered his 2 closest followers in a quiet corner. Their names were Scar and Venom, though those were not their real names. They had earned those titles through cruelty. "The human girl," Kethis said slowly. "She is not what she pretends to be." "She caught the bar like it was nothing," Scar agreed. "And she did not even seem tired afterward." "I have heard stories about Deathworlders," Venom added. "They say humans are persistent predators. They do not stop. They do not give up. They chase their prey until it dies from exhaustion." Kethis smiled with too many teeth. "Then perhaps we should test her. See what happens when the little human is pushed too far. See what is hiding behind that pretty mask." He did not know that Emily was standing around the corner, listening to every word. Her human ears were better than they realized. Her human patience was longer than they could imagine. She had heard everything, and she had already started planning. The prey thought it was the predator. How amusing! Emily walked away without making a sound. She would wait. She would watch. And when the time came, she would show them exactly what a Deathworld apex predator could do. But not yet. Not until they forced her hand. After all, the hunt was always better when the prey thought it was winning. The survival challenge was the biggest event of the year at Westbrook Academy. Every student talked about it for months before it happened. Every teacher used it as motivation. Pass your exams, they would say, or you will fail in the wilderness. The challenge was simple in theory. Students would be dropped onto a wild moon called Terra 7. They would form teams of 5. They would navigate through forests and mountains and rivers to reach checkpoints. They would avoid simulated predators and real environmental dangers. They would survive for 3 days with only basic supplies. For most species in the galaxy, this was terrifying. They came from safe worlds with gentle climates and no natural predators. The idea of sleeping outside, of finding their own food, of facing the raw power of nature, made them sick with fear. For Emily Park, it sounded like a vacation, but there was a problem. The teams were assigned by the teachers, and someone had manipulated the list. Emily found herself grouped with Lord Kethis, his 2 followers Scar and Venom, and a small Valorian girl named Lily, the same Lily that Emily had saved from the falling weight. Kevin found Emily before the transport ship left. His face was tight with worry. "This is a setup," Kevin said. "Kethis arranged this. He wants to break you out there where no one can see." Emily nodded calmly. "I know. So what are you going to do?" Emily looked at the transport ship where her team was waiting. Kethis stood at the entrance with a cruel smile on his scaled face. He thought he was clever. He thought he had trapped her. "I am going to survive," Emily said simply. "That is what humans do." The transport dropped them in a valley surrounded by tall mountains. The trees were purple and blue instead of green. The air smelled sweet and strange. 2 suns hung in the sky, casting double shadows on everything. Instructor Melith's voice came through their communication devices. "You have 3 days to reach the final checkpoint. Work together. Stay safe." "Good luck." The signal cut out. They were alone. Kethis immediately took control. "The checkpoint is north. We move fast and we move now. Anyone who falls behind gets left behind." He looked directly at Emily when he said this. She pretended not to notice that the first day was hard. Kethis set a brutal pace through difficult terrain. Emily kept up easily, but she pretended to struggle. She breathed hard even though her lungs were fine. She stumbled on flat ground even though her balance was perfect. She let them think she was weak. Lily stayed close to Emily. The small Valorian was genuinely struggling. Her species was not built for endurance. By midday, she was limping. "Thank you," Lily whispered during a short rest, "for saving me before." With the weight, Emily smiled softly. "We help each other. That is how we survive." That night, they made camp in a small clearing. Emily gathered firewood while the others complained about the cold. She watched Kethis whisper with Scar and Venom. They kept looking at her. They were planning something. She knew what was coming. She had known since they left the transport. On the second night, they made camp in a narrow canyon. The walls rose high on both sides. There was only one way in and one way out. It was, Emily noted, a terrible place to camp. It was also the perfect place for a trap. She woke in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps leaving. She kept her eyes closed and listened. 3 sets of feet. Kethis and his followers. They took all the supplies except Emily's small pack. They took the communication devices. They took everything. "Sleep well, Deathworlder. Kethis whispered from the canyon entrance. "A storm is coming. Let us see how well humans really survive." Then they were gone. Emily opened her eyes. Lily was sitting up, trembling with fear. The small Valorian had heard everything. "They left us," Lily said, her voice breaking. "They left us to die." Emily stood up slowly. The wind was already picking up. Dark clouds were rolling over the canyon walls. The storm would arrive within the hour. The temperature was dropping fast. They had no shelter, no food, no way to call for help. Most people would have panicked. Most people would have given up. Emily Park was not most people. Something changed in her face. The mask fell away completely. Her eyes became sharp and focused. Her posture straightened. She moved with the quiet confidence of a creature that had never been anything but a predator. "Lily," Emily said, and her voice was different now. Calm, steady, certain. "Do you trust me?" Lily looked at this new version of Emily and felt something she had never felt from a human before. Not fear. Safety, like standing behind an unbreakable wall. "Yes," Lily whispered. "Good. We are going to survive this. Not just survive. We are going to win." Emily moved fast. She found a narrow crack in the canyon wall that led to a small cave. She gathered materials from the strange alien plants and built a shelter that blocked the wind and trapped their body heat. She found water dripping from the rocks above and collected it in leaves. She identified plants that were safe to eat by smell and taste, testing tiny amounts on her tongue the way her grandmother had taught her. The storm hit like a hammer. Wind screamed through the canyon. Rain fell so hard it hurt. Lightning crashed against the rocks. Any normal person caught in the open would have frozen to death within hours. Emily and Lily stayed warm and dry in their shelter. Emily had built a small fire using friction, spinning a stick against dry wood until sparks caught. The firelight danced on the cave walls. Outside, the world tried to kill them. Inside, they were safe. "How do you know all this?" Lily asked, wrapped in a blanket of woven leaves that Emily had made. Emily stared into the fire. Her eyes reflected the flames like the eyes of a wolf. "My planet tried to kill my ancestors every single day for millions of years," Emily said. "The ones who survived were the ones who adapted, the ones who learned, the ones who refused to give up." She looked at Lily. "Humans did not become apex predators because we were the strongest or the fastest. We became apex predators because we never, ever stop." The storm raged all night. By morning, it had passed. Emily led Lily out of the canyon through a path she had scouted in the darkness. She found the trail that led to the checkpoint. She tracked Kethis and his team by their footprints, reading the ground like a book. "They went this way," Emily said. "Moving slow. They think they have already won." They did not win. Emily and Lily reached the final checkpoint 6 hours before any other team. They were dry. They were fed. They were completely unharmed. When Kethis arrived and saw Emily standing there with a calm smile on her face, the color drained from his scales. "How?" he whispered. Emily just looked at him with those predator eyes. "I am human," she said simply. "This is what we do." The news spread through Westbrook Academy like fire through dry grass. Everyone was talking about it. In the cafeteria, in the dormitories, in whispered conversations between classes. The quiet human girl and the small Valorian had not only survived being abandoned in a storm, they had beaten every other team to the final checkpoint. By 6 hours, the security footage made it worse. Every student wore a small camera during the survival challenge. Emily's camera had recorded everything. The abandonment, the storm, and most importantly, the way Emily had transformed from a nervous schoolgirl into something else entirely. Students watched the footage over and over. They saw Emily build a shelter from nothing, They saw her start a fire with her bare hands. They saw her navigate through a storm that should have killed her, moving through the darkness like she could see in the black. They saw her track her enemies through alien terrain she had never visited before. "She's not even breathing hard," Prism said to his friends as they watched the footage for the 5th time. "The storm is trying to tear her apart, and she looks bored." "Look at her eyes," Moss added, his fur standing on end. "When she's pretending to be weak, her eyes are soft. But in the wilderness, they change. They become something else." "Predator eyes," someone whispered. "Those are predator eyes." Lord Kethis faced a disciplinary hearing. The teachers had seen the footage too. Abandoning teammates was a serious offense. The punishment should have been expulsion. It was not. Kethis came from a powerful family. His father was an important general in the Draken military. His mother sat on the Galactic Trade Council. A few calls were made. A few favors were exchanged. The punishment was reduced to a formal warning. Kethis walked out of the hearing room with a smile on his scaled face. He had learned nothing. He had lost nothing. And he was angrier than ever. Emily heard about the reduced punishment while studying in the library. Kevin sat across from her, watching her face carefully. "Are you okay?" Kevin asked. Emily did not look up from her book. "I am fine. He tried to kill you. And Lily. And he is walking around like nothing happened." "He did not try to kill us," Emily said calmly. "He tried to break us. There's a difference. Killing is quick. Breaking takes time. He wanted us to suffer first." Kevin leaned forward. "So what are you going to do?" Emily finally looked up. Her eyes were calm, patient, ancient. "Nothing," she said. "Not yet. He will come to me. Predators like him cannot resist. He failed to break me, so now he needs to prove he is still strong. He will make a move. And when he does, I will be ready." 3 days later, Kethis made his move. It was evening. The halls were mostly empty. Emily was walking back to her dormitory after a late study session. She turned a corner and stopped. Kethis stood in the middle of the corridor. Scar and Venom flanked him on either side. They had positioned themselves to block both exits. It was a simple trap, obvious. The kind of trap that only works when the prey is actually prey. "Hello, human," Kethis said. His voice was low and dangerous. "We need to have a conversation." Emily stopped walking. She stood very still. Her body was relaxed, but her weight was perfectly balanced. Anyone trained in combat would have recognized that stance. Kethis did not. "About what?" Emily asked. Her voice was mild, polite. The voice of a girl who did not understand the danger she was in. Kethis stepped closer. He was much larger than her. His claws were sharp. His teeth were designed for tearing meat from bone. His species had been warriors for 10,000 years. "You embarrassed me," Kethis growled. "In front of the entire school. You made me look weak." "You abandoned us in the storm," Emily said simply. "You made yourself look weak." Scar and Venom hissed at the insult. Kethis' eyes narrowed to slits. "You think you have won something?" Kethis stepped closer again. He was trying to intimidate her with his size. It had always worked before. "You are nothing. You are a jumped-up monkey from a backwater planet. Your species crawled out of the mud while mine was conquering star systems." Emily set down her tablet, slowly, deliberately. She placed it gently on the floor beside her feet. Then she straightened and looked directly into Kethis' eyes. "I have tried being polite," Emily said. Her voice had changed. It was lower now, steadier. The false softness was gone. "I have tried to fit in. I have smiled when you insulted me. I have apologized for things I did not do. I have made myself small so that you would not be afraid." She took a step forward. Kethis, without meaning to, took a step back. But you do not seem to understand what I am. Another step forward. Another step back. Scar and Venom were frozen. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. The small human girl was not acting like prey anymore. My homeworld has predators in every corner, Emily continued. Her eyes never blinked. Her voice never wavered. Creatures that could tear you apart in seconds. We have poison in our plants and in our animals and in our insects. We have storms that flatten cities and earthquakes that swallow mountains and volcanoes that burn the sky. She was close to Kethis now. Very close. Looking up at him. He stood 2 feet taller than her. He outweighed her by 100 pounds of muscle and scale and claw. He was terrified. We did not survive by being the strongest, Emily said. We did not survive by being the fastest. We survived by being the most persistent predators that evolution ever created. We chased our prey until it died of exhaustion. We followed it across deserts and mountains and frozen wastelands. We never stopped. We never gave up. We just kept coming. Scar and Venom ran. They did not make excuses. They did not look back. They simply fled down the corridor and disappeared around the corner. Kethis was alone. So believe me when I tell you this, Emily said, and her voice was quiet now, almost gentle. I can wait much longer than you can. I can endure much more than you can imagine. And if you ever threaten me or anyone I care about again, you will learn exactly why the galaxy fears Deathworlders. She held his gaze for a long moment. He could not look away. He could not move. Every instinct in his warrior body was screaming that he was facing something dangerous. Something patient. Something that had been hunting and killing since before his species learned to walk upright. Finally, Emily smiled. It was a pleasant smile. Friendly. Normal. Have a good evening, she said politely. She picked up her tablet and walked past him down the corridor. She did not look back. She did not hurry. She walked like someone who had absolutely nothing to fear. Kethis stood alone in the empty hallway for a very long time. He never bothered her again. The story of what happened in that corridor spread through Westbrook Academy in hours. No one had seen it directly. There were no cameras in that section of the school. But Scar and Venom talked. They could not help themselves. They described how the small human girl had transformed into something ancient and terrifying. How she had made Lord Kethis, the greatest warrior in their year, back away in fear without raising a hand. The students did not know what to believe at first. Kethis was huge. Kethis was dangerous. Kethis came from a species that had conquered worlds. How could a small human girl make him afraid just by talking? But then they remembered the survival challenge. They remembered the footage of Emily building shelter and starting fire and navigating through impossible conditions. They remembered her eyes. Those predator eyes that saw everything and feared nothing. Maybe the stories about Deathworlders were not exaggerated after all. Ambassador Delith was one of the first to understand. She was a Threlix, a species known for their intelligence and their compound eyes that could see in multiple directions at once. She was president of the student council. She was going to be a diplomat someday. And she had been watching Emily Park since the first day of classes. The human was never weak, Delith told her advisors. She was restrained. There is a very important difference. What do you mean? One of her advisors asked. Delith's compound eyes glittered. A weak creature acts weak because it has no choice. A restrained creature acts weak because it chooses to. Emily Park chose to appear harmless. She wore weakness like a mask. And now that the mask is off, everyone can see what was hiding underneath. The last week of the term arrived. The school prepared for the final assembly where awards would be given and speeches would be made. Emily expected to sit in the back as usual. She expected to be ignored as usual. She was wrong. Instructor Melith called her to the front of the Great Hall. The entire school was watching. Humans and Valorians and Draken and crystalline beings and dozens of other species, all staring at the small girl with the dark ponytail and the oversized cardigan. Emily Park, Instructor Melith announced, has been selected to receive the Academy's Commendation for Excellence in Adaptation. This award recognizes a student who has demonstrated exceptional ability to survive and thrive in challenging circumstances. Emily walked to the stage. Her footsteps were quiet. Her face was calm. She accepted the small trophy and turned to face the crowd. "Would you like to say anything?" Instructor Melith asked. Emily looked out at the assembled students. She saw Kevin in the third row, giving her a thumbs up. She saw Lily near the front, waving with a small smile. She saw Ambassador Delith watching with those intelligent compound eyes. She saw Kethis in the back, looking anywhere but at her. She took a breath. "When I arrived here," Emily said, her voice carrying clearly through the Great Hall, "I thought I had to hide what I was. Humans are classified as a Deathworld species. I know that frightens some of you. Our planet is violent. Our history is violent. We evolved as persistence predators, chasing our prey across continents until they collapsed from exhaustion. We are, by any scientific definition, dangerous." The hall was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. So I pretended to be something else. I made myself small. I acted nervous. I apologized for existing. I thought that if I showed you what I really was, you would be afraid of me. You would hate me. You would see me as a monster. Emily paused. Her eyes moved across the crowd, meeting the gaze of species after species. But I learned something important during my time here. I learned that being an apex predator does not mean being cruel. My ancestors did not survive because they were monsters. They survived because they worked together. They protected each other. They built communities and shared food and cared for their sick and elderly. They developed empathy and compassion and love, not in spite of their harsh world, but because of it. Her voice grew stronger, more certain. When your planet is trying to kill you every single day, you learn to value the people who stand beside you. You learn that strength means nothing without kindness. You learn that the most powerful weapon in the universe is not claws or teeth or weapons. It is the choice to protect instead of destroy. She held up the small trophy. So yes, a Deathworld apex predator wears this face. I come from a planet that creates monsters. I have instincts that are designed for hunting and killing and surviving against impossible odds. She smiled. But that same apex predator also helps her classmates study for exams. She bakes cookies for her dormitory floor. She sits with lonely students at lunch so they do not have to eat alone. She catches falling weights so that small Valorian girls do not get crushed. Light laughter rippled through the crowd. The tension was breaking. "We are what we choose to be," Emily said firmly. "My planet gave me strength and endurance and the patience of a hunter. But I choose what to do with those gifts. I choose to protect instead of threaten. I choose to build instead of destroy. I choose to be kind even when I do not have to be." She looked directly at Kethis for a moment. He flinched, because that is what being truly strong really means. Emily stepped back from the podium. For a moment, there was silence. Then Lily started clapping. Then Kevin. Then Ambassador Delith. Then the entire hall erupted in applause. Species that had feared humans for generations were cheering for a small girl with a ponytail and a too big sweater. Emily returned to her seat. Kevin leaned over. "Nice speech," he said. "Thanks," Emily replied. "I meant every word." Years later, Ambassador Emily Park would stand in halls much greater than Westbrook Academy. She would negotiate treaties between species that had been enemies for centuries. She would calm conflicts and build alliances and help create a more peaceful galaxy. Her reputation would spread across known space. They called her the soft-spoken diplomat, the woman who never raised her voice, the human who made warriors hesitate just by looking at them. No one was ever sure if she was genuinely gentle or simply choosing to be kind. That was the point. The most dangerous predators, Emily knew, were the ones who chose peace. Not because they were weak, not because they had to, but because they understood something that others did not. True strength was not about what you could destroy. It was about what you chose to protect. And Emily Park, the small girl from a death world called Earth, had chosen to protect as many people as she could for as long as she lived. That was what wearing a human face really meant.